Buddhism has had an enormous influence on the cultures of East Asia, and this influence can be traced in almost any area, from art to literature to thought, and of course also language. This video introduces some commonly used words of Buddhist origin in modern Chinese, that is in Mandarin. So these words go back to early Buddhist texts, although today nobody thinks of them that way. They are just simply part of everyday Chinese language. So if you're interested in this, keep watching. Buddhist scriptures written in Indic languages began to be translated into Chinese around the 2nd century AD, that is about 1900 years ago. Many of the translations of Buddhist sutras, done up to about the 5th century, remain in common use today in various countries of East Asia. As the result of the enormous impact of Buddhism on Chinese culture, many of the words originally used in Buddhist literature became integrated into the Chinese language and have become part of the common lexicon, and continue to be used in contexts that are unrelated to Buddhism. Today they are simply ordinary words, and most people would not be aware of their Buddhist origin. The number of such words is actually quite large, but today I'm only going to introduce a few of them, just to show how ordinary they are in modern Chinese. Word number 1 is Kunao. In modern Chinese, this word means distress, uneasiness, or to feel distress, feel uneasy. So you would use it in expressions like 苦恼的问题, which means a difficult question, or like 让消费者感到苦恼, which means to cause distress to consumers. But historically, this word clearly goes back to Chinese translations of Buddhist sutras, where the word was used to translate the Sanskrit term dukkha, that is suffering, which is of course at the very core of the Buddhist teachings. As we can see, the meaning of the word kind of stayed the same, but today it no longer has a religious connotation. It simply means hardship, distress, and can be used in any context. The word has become a basic part of the Chinese language. Word number 2 is Xiaochu, which in modern Chinese means to eliminate, get rid of. So you might find it in expressions like 消除颈纹, to eliminate neck wrinkles, or 消除疲劳, to eliminate fatigue. Originally, in the Buddhist context, this word had a similar meaning and was used to translate words meaning to get rid of, eradicate, but more commonly it was used in the intransitive sense, to disappear, to dissipate, to disperse. For example, it could be used in the phrase 一切罪障自消除. All karmic obstacles caused by bad behavior would disappear of their own. Or 恐怖悉消除, all fear will disappear. But it could also be used in a less abstract, very specific sense, as in the phrase 云雾消除, the clouds and the fog disappeared. Word number 3 is Zainan. In modern Chinese, this is the standard word for the concept of disaster. So it's used in all possible combinations, such as 防止灾难, to prevent disasters. For example, the Chernobyl disaster is called 切尔诺贝利灾难. Or to cite another example, the title of Edwin Gray's book, Disasters of the Deep, was translated into Chinese as 深海灾难, literally meaning disasters of the deep ocean. Word number 4 is Shijie. In modern Chinese, this word means world, and so it's used in all possible combinations related to this. For example, 世界文学, world literature, or 第二次世界大战, Second World War. And the title of A.G. Wells's book, A Short History of the World, was translated into Chinese as 世界简史. So the use of this word is completely secular, or rather comprehensive, and has no religious connotation. But ultimately it comes from Buddhist texts and was used to translate the Sanskrit word loka, which means world systems, world realm. And so Buddhist texts commonly talk about immeasurable worlds, in Chinese 无量世界, or the 3,000 great thousand worlds, 3000大千世界, that is the 3,000 chiliocosms. But the history of the Chinese word 世界 is a bit more complex than this, because in China it was adopted into the modern language through Japan. And so it's one of those Chinese-style Japanese words that were introduced into China at the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century during this new wave of modernization. In Japan, they had been originally adapted during the Meiji period, when Japan itself was modernizing and westernizing. But even in Japan, they had originally come from the shared corpus of East Asian Buddhist terms, which ultimately derived from Chinese Buddhist texts. And finally, word number 5 is Buke siyi. Technically speaking, this is not a word, but more like a phrase, or even a chengyu, a 4-character idiom. And today it means amazing, incredible. So you see it commonly in titles of books and movies with this meaning. For example, the National Geographic TV series Amazing Animal Friends is translated into Chinese as 不可思议的好朋友, which just means amazing friends. And of course there are many other books, for example the 不可思议的科学, which means amazing science or incredible science. The expression is also very common in Japan, where it's mostly used as 不思議, which is pronounced 不思議, meaning magical, incredible, amazing, and is also part of everyday language. Originally in Buddhism, it was used as a translation of terms like achinta or achintya, meaning unfathomable, mysterious, wondrous. And the literal meaning of the Chinese characters is, of course, something that cannot be imagined, something that cannot be thought of. But today in China, the word simply means amazing. So these are 5 examples of words and phrases that are commonly used in modern China today as ordinary words, but originally they came from Buddhist texts, or rather Chinese translations of Buddhist texts. They were used by early translators to convey meanings in Buddhist texts that were originally not part of the Chinese language, that came from Indic languages. Finally, we should also mention that there are some words of Chinese Buddhist origin which made their way into English, or rather a shared pool of international vocabulary. And although they originate in China, they came to the West through Japan. One of the most common ones is the word Zen, which is actually a Japanese reading of the Chinese term Chan. So what is Zen Buddhism in Japan was Chan Buddhism in China. But actually the Chinese term Chan itself was the phonetic rendering of the Sanskrit term dhyana, meaning contemplation, meditation. So originally Chan was pronounced something more like dhyan, and so it resembled dhyana a little more. But it was in China that this word started to be used for an entire school of Buddhism. And this later was taken to Japan, where it was pronounced Zen. And so it is through interactions with Japan that this term started to be used in the West and was later popularized and used in context outside of Buddhism, in other areas of life. So you have a whole array of books talking about the Zen of this, the Zen of that. For example, you have like the Zen of running, the Zen of therapy, or even the Zen of Steve Jobs. In these cases, the word retains some of its original meaning, but it's actually used more creatively to convey other meanings. And we could also mention the word dojo, which in English means a place for practicing martial arts. It is another word that came into English through Japanese, through the adoption of martial arts such as judo and karate. The literal meaning of the word is the place of the way, or the site of the way. And the word way here should be capitalized because it refers to the ultimate way of doing something, the ultimate practice. It was used in Japan in the Zen Buddhist context to indicate the place where people practiced meditation. And this is in fact the original meaning of the word in Chinese Buddhist texts. In China it was pronounced Daochang, and it originally meant the site of meditation, the place where meditation happened, and by extension a place where people practiced meditation. Okay, so these are some basic examples to demonstrate the indebtedness of the Chinese language to Buddhism. Let me know if you have any questions or whether you know other examples of words like this. Thank you for watching and see you next time.